Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? The religious leaders asked. Why bother with those people, we might say today, if we're honest. This gospel story begins on an ordinary day in Capernaum. People doing their everyday things until Jesus comes along and disrupts everything. Much like other stories, Jesus is walking along in a village on a beaten down dirt road in his unassuming sandals and attire. And on this particular day, he spies Matthew working at the tax collection station. And he calls out to him, "Follow me." And he says this to Matthew, and Matthew leaves his post. And they go on their way to Matthew's house for supper. And a gathering of tax collectors, sinners, Jesus, and disciples ensues. And they are seen breaking bread together by the Pharisees. Mealtime was a deeply communal act of hospitality, unlike in our modern world of fast food, drive-thrus, microwave dinners, air-frying dishes, prepared store-bought meals, coffee table while we watch the game shared meals. Sharing bread and salt was a covenantal binding act. Grains, figs, olives, fish, vegetables were harvested from the local gardens and the waterways with their own hands, cooked all day long in the brick oven, stoves, and stone ovens, and pan-fried cast irons, feeding that fire all day long. And they sat close together. There's no long dining room, farmer's table, Da Vinci type of Lord's Supper setup. No. They sat close together in a living room on mats, on a dirt floor, on stools or in a reclined posture, sharing bowls, plates, and cups, scooping stew out of a shared bowl, soaking up the juice and wiping their hands. There's no napkins, there's no utensils. They're wiping their hands with the broken pieces of bread. Picture that, okay? This particular day's communal supper is intimate. And this communal intimacy is much more than breaking bread. It was breaking barriers. This daily bread was dismantling social order. Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? The Pharisees asked the disciples. Why bother with this meal, with these people, with this intimacy? We might ask today. Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Jesus responds. And just then he is whisked away to heal those seeking mercy, who call out to him from their faith. And disciples in tow follow him. And just then he was whisked away to heal those seeking belonging, for those who are seeking to be known, to be loved, for mercy. It's unclear exactly who are the sinners at this table on this particular day. We do know sinners in this ancient Galilean context were people who did not follow Jewish purity laws, who did not observe the Sabbath, who broke Mosaic laws, who were unclean. Sinners were also social, economic outcasts. The less thans, the others, the ostracized, the unloved, the mocked. Tax collectors, on the other hand, in this ancient context, were considered traitors to their own people, a specific kind of sinner. People whose moral compass was clouded by power and personal survival. Their behavior, their work helped perpetuate the illnesses of the Roman Empire, the earthly world, collecting taxes from their financially struggling neighbors to fund Roman rule and infrastructure. The collected taxes from the people did not provide food for them or clothing or medicine for the needy. No. On the backs of the struggling and sometimes even dying neighbors, the Roman capital, across the way, across the Sea of Galilee, was being beautified. A skyline of golden statues of the emperor, plated archways over roadways to mark dominance, new bathhouses for the elite and leisure. The people's taxes funded lavish gladiator matches on public squares, massive military, and the salary of the imperial administrators. Tax collectors grossed up the amounts the townspeople owed to the state, furthering the exploitation while deepening their own pockets. Furthering the systematic oppression, imperial worshiping, and the disreputable harm in society. Whew. They were active participants in the injustices, in the ills, in the evils of the world, building up the earthly kingdom, subscribing to the rich get richer and the poor get poorer way of life. So I ask, why bother with tax collectors and sinners? The Pharisees asked. Why bother? We ask today. We have our own versions of tax collectors today, don't we? People who exploit the poor, hurt people for personal gain, for power, for survival. People whose actions build up the earthly kingdom of privilege and power and authority and greed. People who worship earthly desires. We also have our own versions of sinners. Outcasts, marginalized, the impoverished, the unloved, people who break covenant, break laws, people who we may not want to admit it or not, we outwardly or privately categorize as those people. We have Pharisees and disciples and bystanders and courtyard cooks. We have Jesus at the table, who invites and teaches us and empowers us, who is the guest and the host, who sets the table before us, making way for communal healing, making way for transformation, making way for our participation in giving and receiving of grace. Here, on this not-so-ordinary day in Capernaum, shadowed by the imperial city skylines, the strict religious laws and societal rules, tax collectors, sinners, Jesus and his disciples are at the same table in communion at Matthew's house, sharing space, sharing stories, and sharing a meal. Why bother with tax collectors and sinners, the Pharisees asked Jesus' disciples. Why bother with this communal meal, with these people, with this intimacy, we ask today. This intimacy, this communion, initiated and modeled by Jesus, is more than breaking bread. It is about breaking barriers. For in this intimacy, in this communion, in this breaking of bread, God is breaking in with a new kind of kingdom for us, for all. For in the breaking of the bread, in the shared courtyard of preparation, God invites hearts to open. God invites tenderness. God invites restoration. By cultivating the power of presence with mercy, not sacrifice, so healing can begin. Imagine being invited by Jesus to sit and have a meal. Be at the same table to scoop stew out of the same bowl, drink from the same cup, break and eat pieces of bread from the same loaf with someone who has hurt you. Someone who has hurt others. Someone who you have hurt. Someone who hurts themselves. Who condemns, who is condemned, who does not look like you, whose identity rubs against you, whose hat and flag and t-shirt and color of skin, accent and piercings and age and gender and sexual preference and marital status, smell, means, whose choices in life irritate you. Imagine sitting at that table with this intimate exchange. Imagine sitting at that table who, in our limited human perspective, whether we want to admit it or not, we feel do not deserve God's mercy, who we feel are not worthy of God's love, God's forgiveness, and that who could even be ourselves. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Being actively involved in this type of gathering, this type of meal, isn't it? This compassionate divine action is exactly what Jesus asked us to do. To imagine a kingdom with the lion and the lamb dying together. But let's be real. This is beyond our imagination. Difficult to even comprehend. As followers of Christ, we are invited to wrestle with this. We are challenged by this notion, this action. We are called to create spaces for sharing of stories, for sharing of intimate meals. Yet, how do we do this? How do we do this? Leif Segelman, a minister of wholeness, a prison chaplain, pastor and educator, discusses redemption and a call to tenderness in her book, Being Restorative. She wrote, if we jump headfirst into accountability, yes, start pointing fingers, without the foundation of self-compassion, we might end up unable to fully own our own participation in the system of oppression. She further writes, extending tenderness to the most tender places within us allows us to recognize that others have tender places as well. It is only in an uncondemned state that any of us can change. This month is Pride Month, and Juneteenth is coming up. These celebrations for equity and equality, for liberation, for humanity, for all. These celebrations push us and invite us to sit together at the table of compassion, to wrestle with why bother questions. This gospel story begins on an ordinary day in an ordinary village with ordinary people doing ordinary everyday things, existing, accepting, enduring, sacrificing, trying to make a living, trying to get ahead, giving up and giving in to the injustices in the world. Why bother, they might be asking. Until Jesus comes along and disrupts everything. Dismantles power, dismantles authority, dismantles judgment with mercy. Friends, healing and wholeness require faith, require work, require active participation in God's inbreaking with courage with reflection, with compassion, with awareness, with accountability, with humility, with forgiveness, with restoration, and yes, even self-love. Why bother with tax collectors and sinners, the Pharisees asked. Why should we bother? Why should we care? What does it matter, we ask today, especially in today's climate of destruction and division? Because nothing is beyond hope. We have choices before us. We can choose to be active participants in either building up the earthly kingdom or bringing forth God's kingdom with mercy and love. Today's gospel story is about mercy, not sacrifice. God's mercy is wide, unimaginable, and everlasting. Not selective, inclusive. God's mercy is for all. And we are invited to follow Jesus, embodying this compassionate presence, a tenderness towards self and others, and a disruptive grace, and sharing space, and sharing stories, and learning about each other, who we are, listening. And we can do that in sharing a meal, in that intimate gathering. This tenderness, this embodied compassion is transformative for those sharing the meal, for those witnessing, walking by, for those retelling the story. Did you hear what I saw? Did you hear what happened? This tenderness, this embodied compassion is transformative for those sharing the meal and for generations to come. Once we start embodying it, we give that gift away for others to embody. This kind of hospitality transforms all involved. For all who have been separated, estranged, hurt, who yearn to belong, who yearn to be loved, who yearn for justice, who yearn to be free. Why is Jesus sitting with the tax collectors and the sinners, they asked? Why bother? What's in it for me? We might ask today. Nothing. Just mercy for all. May it be so. Praise be to God.